Welcome to episode 2 of the Denim Wrapped Nightmares and In Defense of Fandom podcast crossover. I'm LA, and this is a quick reminder that we're covering the music of Supernatural, from music in the show to music inspired by the show to music created by actors, cast, and crew. And our first interview represents two of those groups. Billy Moran is known by fans as the guitarist for the band Loud and Swain. Loud and Swain, a California rock band fronted by actor Rob Benedict. Benedict? Rob Benedict has become a convention staple. Besides playing gigs in music venues across the world, Loud and Swain also performs at each Supernatural convention at the Saturday Night Special. We wanted to talk to Billy because he was a fan of Supernatural well before he started playing convention concerts. Let's get to Billy.
I mean, obviously the music is what originally attracted me to the show in the first place, you know. I grew up on all of that stuff, you know, the AC/DC and Black Sabbath and you name it. I mean, it was like there was a period of time when I first moved to LA in 2001, and the music was completely different from when I was listening to back home. You know, I was listening to classic rock stations, and I really didn't have any like thing on the radio to listen to that was the equivalent. So one day I was just sitting in my office and I was browsing the internet and I saw this website for this TV show Supernatural, and you could change the radio stations. It was like a Flash website when Flash was still around, and you could change the radio station on the dial of the car. You could step on the gas pedal and you could like turn the wheel. And I remember listening to the soundtrack going like, damn, that's what I've been missing. You know, it's like, this is the stuff that I've been longing for, you know, because it's like, there's been a kind of an absence in my life at that point. So I was like, and nothing on TV was really doing that type of music, you know, the classic rock, and you know, so it was actually kind of very different for me to be like, oh wow, well this show is actually appealing to me in that way, just straight from the music, you know. So I started watching it. I actually pitched it to my then girlfriend, now wife Michelle at the time. I'm like, we should check out this show. I was like, I think that for one, I like the music that they're picking for it, and two, I think it might be kind of cool. So we started watching it for a while, and it was just like every week we would just turn on the show and listen to Kansas or, you know, what, you name it, you know, and we started like really enjoying it. And at the same time I met Michelle, I had joined Loud and Swain, like within 2 weeks. It was like two monumental shifts in my life at the same time. It was pretty wild. And I was playing with Swain, and shortly, I mean, God, maybe it was like a few years into us playing together, where Rob comes to rehearsal one day. He's like, hey, I just got cast on this show. You may have heard of it, Supernatural. I'm like, of course I've heard of it. It's like, it's got the best soundtrack on TV. It's like, it's amazing. And it's like, oh, cool. It's like, so I have to go and shoot. The problem is we were playing a show in Mammoth, California, the weekend he had to shoot. So he was like, I think I could pull off the show still in Mammoth, but I might have to go right from Mammoth to Vancouver to go film the show. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So he blew out his voice that weekend in Mammoth, and like was like really worried about like having to do dialogue and stuff on set the next, like that Monday or whatever. But he pulled it off. It was fine. But he's like, yeah, I could always do like ADR or whatever. So he comes back and he's like, yeah, so I did the show and it was really cool. And it's like, apparently like they do these conventions. And I know I'm jumping way ahead, but and he goes, it might be kind of cool, you know, if I could see about getting the band into one of those conventions. I'm like, well, if they like the music that I like, I think we could pull that off, you know. And then kind of the rest is kind of history from there. But yeah,
it's so much more connected than I thought.
Yeah, it's pretty wild though, right? When you start thinking about like, and then you know, I was living. Michelle and I were living in Studio City at the time. And my office was on Ventura Boulevard. And I remember like I was with Loud and Swain, and then I would go to this LA Fitness across the street at lunch break, you know, to work out and stuff, because I'm a huge exercise buff guy. I ran into Jared there, and I'm like, what the hell, dude? And I'm like, so I know, and I told him, I introduced myself. I'm like, I'm in Rob's band. He's like, oh, dude, cool. It's like, I heard you guys are going to come to one of the conventions. And I was like, yeah. And I couldn't remember Rich's name at the time, because it was Rich who kind of created the whole thing with having the band at the conventions full time. I'm like, yeah, I think this other guy is going to be hosting and stuff, and we're going to be the house band. He's like, oh, that's awesome, man! I can't wait to see you in Vegas. We're like, all right, cool. I don't know. It's just crazy when you start thinking about like this how random but not random everything kind of fell together. With everything, with the music and stuff.
Wait, so when did you go from Rob was on the show to you're going to be in a convention? Like, how long was that
It
gap?
wasn't that long after his appearance on the show where he suddenly had a convention agent, and that convention agent was looking for us to, to perform at these shows. So it was kind of like as soon as his episode hit the air, it was like, oh, okay, this is going to be different, And I think the first one we've ever done for the Supernatural convention was in Los Angeles at like LAX airport, and they didn't have a PA system or anything, so it was just like they had like a PA for like speaking, but not for a full band. So it was like we really overpowered the PA. It was kind of funny, but that's where we got to meet Rich for the very first time, and a lot of the actors on the show at the first time. I think it was like a Thursday or Friday night show we did there, and it was a blast.
So was that first convention, were you still playing the like intro outro songs for as people are coming on stage, or was it purely just a Saturday night special?
It wasn't even Saturday night special at that time. It was just a concert. Because at that point they had music at the conventions. Jason Manns was doing a concert, and I think Brian Buckley was doing a concert, and they would shuffle between the three of us for like these concerts on like Friday or Thursday nights, whatever night worked out for the convention. And it was way before even us being a house band. It was just like, and then like months would lapse, and we're like, oh, that was fun. We wish we could do that again, And I was like, yeah, we might be doing one, in Burbank or whatever. So we would do it whenever they would come to town. The thought of flying us around the world at that point was just like, no way, that was ridiculous to even think. Like, we felt that like, well, when they came through town, we would probably be at least considered, And then, and then Rich kind of figured out a way to kind of make it more of a permanent thing, which has been ever since,
I was gonna say, and the first time, like the very first one, was that when you were Elastic Waistband, technically?
The very first convention with Rich as host was the Elastic Waistband. Yeah, we had to, it was funny. I don't know why exactly he came up with the idea, but I think we were kind of like trying to like sneak our way into it, but also kind of like, embracing this persona of like this house band, this cheesy 70s, rock band, but was like all Rich's brainchild, as you could imagine. And I think we did that for about a year until Mark Sheppard's like, you got to ditch the wigs, guys. You don't need to be, going as the Elastic Waistband. So you should be, using Loud and Swain. And that's when it was funny too, because that first year, I mean, we would be on stage and Jared would be like, how about the Elastic Waistband, everybody? And we're like, okay, I don't want to be known for that, so we kind of changed that quickly.
But is there any secret merch that was made that was Elastic
There was.
Waistband?
Yeah,
there
there
some
was
vintage merch?
Yeah, you'll see it floating around every now and again. Someone will have like, I think we had a baseball tee with a photo of us. We had some really funny photos. I don't even know who did the logo. We had this like Elastic Waistband logo. It was cool though. But Bora was my favorite. He was Sir Richard Furlong was his character's name, and he had this big wig and green suit. It was hysterical. I wish I wouldn't be opposed to him wearing that again.
Do you think so? The reason that you did like a 70s rock band style, was it trying to play into the music of the show to be like, we're just like AC/DC, but like cheesier?
It wasn't that. It was I had initially thought like they wanted the band to be that, like the soundtrack from the show live on stage. So yeah, we were pulling songs from AC/DC. We were pulling, Deep Purple, and like I'm like, are we gonna have to learn 70 classic rock songs for this show in Vegas? So I'm like, I was kind of a little like, oh man, this is a big workload, and it was really nice to see like, oh no, we only had to play like 15 seconds of either of those songs, whatever we decided to play. So that made it a lot easier. Took the workload down for sure. But yeah, we knew that it was going to have to be tailored towards the show, because it's like that's the connective tissue from seeing it on the screen to seeing it on stage performing, you know, with actors, you know, being interviewed and stuff like that. I felt like it was very important to kind of have that kind of connection.
Did you or do you feel like Loudon Swain's musical style changed as you started doing more of these conventions where like you were influenced by them as well?
I don't think so, because honestly, it's like I've always come at the band, approaching the music from the band, from the classic rock world. So it's like that's always going to be a part of whenever I bring a song to the band. It's always going to have the DNA of classic rock, and so I don't think it's affected how we write. In fact, there's, you know, everyone comes from completely different worlds in that regard. You know, I'm the classic rock guy. Norton's also a classic rock guy, but kind of leans more in the 80s rock. Borja and Rob are more like the Depeche Mode, you know, kind of kids, you know, which is cool because it kind of really kind of adds this really interesting blend, you know, when you're starting to add a classic rock and Depeche Mode in the same room writing a song together, you know, it kind of lends to be some interesting stuff, you know.
Yeah. Get to have some genre bending experiences.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, the classic rock has always been my thing. And yeah, and I don't think we've ever set out to write a song specifically because it felt like it was right, because it was on the, you know, felt like the show. It was always, you know, Rob would have a personal experience, or I would have a personal experience, and the songs would come from that place, which I think is, you know, I think it's important as a songwriter to kind of pull from the heart, you know, as opposed to what we think people want to hear, you know.
I was gonna say, you do have, it's the Guilty one, right? That is actually kind of the story of like being on the road for the conventions. So it got reflected in an indirect way.
Well, it's on the road, but it's actually, we did a tour. We did a tour as Loudon Swain up the East Coast, and we were playing in Atlanta. I think we did Eddie's Attic, and we were playing. So it's like the tours would kind of coincide with the conventions in a way. Like we would, like, if the convention was going to end in Atlanta, I think we ended it in Atlanta and we drove to Florida for the convention or something like that. But leading up to that convention, we did a little mini tour, and a lot of the snow in Atlanta was a real thing. You know, it was like waking up in Atlanta and we couldn't get the car out of the driveway because it was like sliding into the person's mailbox for the Airbnb that we were staying at. So yeah, I love that song for that reason, because it's like, oh yeah, that was a terrible tour.
Like that was an adventure. We're gonna keep that just like that.
Yeah.
So did you keep watching Supernatural after Rob joined the cast, or did you eventually feel too weird now that you knew everybody?
I felt, and I think the episode was called Swan Song, where it was Rob's last episode. To me, that was like the end of Supernatural for me, because I felt like I was in that world in a different way. You know what I mean? And I don't know, it's just, it's weird to kind of separate the people that you know from the people that you're watching on television, you know, because it's like I get like very like, sometimes it's the reverse for fans at conventions where they have a hard time turning off, oh, that's Dean, or that's Sam. I have a hard time turning off, oh, that's Jared, or that's Jensen now, or that's Rob, you know. So to me, it's kind of, it throws me off a little bit watching them on screen in a way where I could like actually get immersed in the story again. I don't know if that makes any sense at all. So, but I did feel like the Swan Song was a really great way for me to kind of be like, that was a great chunk of my life, you know. I think it was 5 seasons or 6 seasons, something like that. And then they continued on, and like there's still people that I haven't seen on Supernatural at these conventions. Like I haven't seen any of DJ's episode or anything like that. It would be kind of cool to do what Rob and Rich are doing, where they're doing the rewatch, you know, and now you kind of see everyone's kind of introduced. But no, after season 5 or that Swan Song episode, I was just like, all right, that was cool, you know.
It gave you a good bookend. You felt like there was an ending there. You didn't need
It did feel like the end of the show in a way, you know what I mean? Like that was, it felt like if the show did end at that moment, you know, I think there would have been some satisfied viewers, you know. But I don't think it was popular then, but I don't know if it was as huge as it would have, has it gotten past that, you know what I mean? So I feel like the more episodes that they aired, the more attached to the show the fans got and the viewers got. So it became like almost nearly impossible to end it in a way where people would be happy, you know? So I think, season 10, like, how are you going to end it now, dude? You got 10 seasons of fans. But yeah, I felt that was a good ending, swan song.
Yeah. Did you feel like, well, I guess so all 5 of those seasons would have been Kripke seasons, because I wanted to ask if you felt like the music kind of shifted from the early seasons to late seasons, but you skipped that part to some degree.
I did. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't. I don't know. All I know that we were placed in some of those episodes later. I know that Worlds Collide was during. I don't know what season it was, but it was when I was watching it. I remember.
Season 7, I think it's Slice Girls, because
Yes.
they just did on Supernatural Then and Now with Robin Rich, and I was like,
Yes,
that song.
yeah, Slice Girls. Yeah, so that was season 7. So I did watch that episode just because it was like, that's pretty cool. That was the first time we ever were placed in the show. And then like our song cut right into, I think it was AC/DC, Shook Me All Night Long.
You shook me, yeah.
Yeah, which I was like, that's cool. I haven't had that ever happen, where I was like, my guitar solo is crossing over AC/DC, like Angus Young's riff there. So, but that was awesome. So yeah, I think it stayed true to the show, based upon just that episode. Having AC/DC in it was pretty cool,
Yeah, you're like, I'm gonna put this in my resume for everything I ever do from here on out.
Like, look at that, my sizzle reel.
Has any of your experience like watching the show inspired any of the music you've written, or has it been very much just like the 4 of your lived experience?
Norton had brought a song to the band on the last record called Next to the Light, and it was basically about being in that world and living inside of that world when you have like this kind of high energy around the fandom and around the music, or around the celebrity on the show. And I think that was probably the most we've ever tackled as far as the topics from our experiences within the convention that have actually made it to a song. And I think Rob kind of took Norton's idea and flipped it, where it was sometimes you're next to the light, and sometimes it kind of it burns you out, because you get so enamored with the day-to-day of it all that you're at risk of really kind of frying yourself out, so you have to kind of be, take a step and then kind of collect yourself and just protect yourself more than anything, that you don't burn yourself out, because there's a lot of times where the demand is, when you're doing it, back to back, or you're throwing a tour in between 2 conventions, it's very easy to kind of get detached from reality at home and stuff. So you have to be very careful, like, okay, I need to focus on this tour, but I also make sure that, like, once this ends, there's life after this, So I think it's very important to kind of take almost like a bird's eye approach of everything. Is like, this is the big picture. You got to pull out and see the big picture, So I think that's that's one song that was easily inspired by the kind of the chaos that, encapsulates a little bit of that world at times.
Yeah, it feels very much like a pocket universe when you're at the kind of like convention and etc., right? That it's just very much its own bubble.
It really is. And it is, obviously all of our families know each other from, certain conventions and stuff like that. But when you tap in, it is like you're going into this second life. You know what I mean? It's like this is a whole second life that you're, existing in, that you have to, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild stuff.
But do you have like after a tour or a convention, do you have like a decompression routine that helps you kind of like reset for the rest of life?
Honestly, it's just like 2 days of nothing really. After that, it's like it really, like, it's like I'll do stuff around the house and stuff. I'll kind of tap into that life, normal life. But it's I don't think I'll pick up a guitar for a couple of days. I think it's a little bit of like, that was a lot. You know what I mean? I don't want to burn myself out by going. I mean, I'll pick it up when I feel like it, but I'm not going to like my exercise routines with guitar and stuff like that, and practice routines are. I'm a little more lax when I come back home, from that stuff. So it's not really, again, it's like if I'm inspired to do it, then I will, but I'm not going to force myself to play, and So sometimes you need that little break.
It's like a music weekend where you're like, I
Yeah.
just need a couple days
Yeah.
off and I'll be back at it.
It's like going to a concert and then getting in the car and then turning on the radio full blast. You're not going to do that. You know what I mean? Unless you're like 18, maybe. But it was like, yeah, there's like even driving home from the Troubadour, I'm like, just the quiet sounds nice right now. You know what I mean? Just the hum of the road. So
Speaking of concerts, what was the first official Saturday night special? Like, how did that get set up?
that was. Well, it was in Vegas when we were the Elastic Waistband. We took off the garments and the wigs and makeup, and we hit the stage as Loud and Swain that Saturday night. So that was the very first Saturday night special, and I think that we were still working on a PA that was underpowered, so we had that challenge. But I think overall, though, the ingredients were there for what would become the Saturday night special ongoing. But yeah, that was when we went out on hit the stage on Loud and Swain and really confused everybody there that was there the whole weekend. Like, I thought this was the Elastic Waistband. Why are they? And then I think that's when we really knew, like, okay, we need to continue just as Loud and Swain.
Can't have that many multiple identities at the same weekend.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
How have the concerts kind of changed over time? Has the audience changed? I mean, obviously you've got better PAs now, so that's great.
Yeah, better PA. I feel like the audience. I feel like every 2 years there's a whole new group of audience that comes to the shows that where they've never heard of us at all. So there's a lot of like, okay, now we need to kind of explain what this is and who we are and why we're there. So there's a little bit of that. I feel like every couple of years, there's like and then it's like an audience almost like there's a lot of consistent people there that have been there since the beginning, and then there's a lot of people that have discovered the show via Netflix or any of the streaming stuff. So that's a very new audience, and it's interesting playing for a new audience for a show that we've been playing on for X many years, like 11 years now. I think 2014 it was our first one. So yeah, it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild to think like, oh, we have to reintroduce these people to us, which is great. It's a blessing, and it's also keeps it interesting. It's a challenge that we like to accept, each time. So
it's like the difference between the culture of the conventions versus the fans, because everybody's watched the same show, but it's different.
Yeah, and I think we got that question at the Troubadour, like what's the one? I think one of the tricky things about playing for a new audience at a convention, and I think there's where we're kind of having to not, I don't want to use the word sell, but kind of like I guess share with them what we do, and then if we're lucky enough, we get to do the shows outside of the conventions where they all show up again, and then we feel like that's a fan, that's a fan of our music, so it's kind of cool. It's like we have this opportunity to reach new fans at the conventions, and then we see if that opportunity was successful by pulling off a show in Chicago or wherever we may be. So that's kind of cool to see. Oh, that's cool, you were paying attention. That's how you kind of
We know you're a Jared girl or a Jensen girl, but we're very glad you're also a Loud and Swain girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, do you think that the concerts changed a lot because of COVID as well? Because I mean, I feel like we kind of have all memory hold it, but that was such a different experience.
That was terrible. Yeah, I remember the first time we played Medicated after COVID and being like, I don't think we should do the thing with the lips and the spit and the spit. I think that's a bad idea. I was like, I got really kind of like almost like COVID anxiety. I had like this deep anxiety of doing anything like that could potentially spread something and become suddenly that we're a super spreader event. And, I think it took a while for me to get comfortable with that again, just coming out of it. Cause it was just like, I remember I would even wear a mask on stage, like it was weird, the first couple times back where it was wild. Hope we never ever have to relive that again, because it was not fun in the slightest. But yeah, I feel like we've gotten as close to 2019 as we could possibly have gotten this year. I feel like it's starting to finally feel like it was prior to COVID. Up until then, there was still like these weird little side, things that would happen. You're just like, oh, there's someone had COVID at the last event. And you're like, okay, well, is that really a thing anymore? So it's like you can kind of almost dismiss it in a way. Whereas I feel like for the first time we're able to kind of just relax into the shows more.
And like have the like pits again and have people be
Yeah.
able to like crowd around the stage and make it feel more concerty than being in a hotel ballroom.
Yeah, and then the club shows, they feel, like I remember before COVID we would do a couple shows a night, like whether it be in Austin and it's starting to go back to those days, where we could kind of have fun at these shows outside of the conventions, and not worry about, the club having to have these different policies in place.
It's actually not so much a question as it is, I just want to see if this background triggers any of your own thoughts on the subject, Billy. The whole reason that Sadie and I decided to focus on music for a Supernatural 20th anniversary special is because in Rich and Rob's podcast, Eric Kripke came on there and talked about how music was one of his deal breaker items whenever he was making the show, that he had explained what kind of music he wanted in the show. And executives originally tried to push back and be like, no, you can't do that. That's not what CW shows have. And we're wanting him to do more current pop stuff, right? And that he said, I guess I'm going to have to quit. And they were like, really? You're going to quit over this? And he said, yes. And so just kind of talks about how essential music was to building Supernatural. And Sadie and I were talking about how cool it was that it was so essential to creating the show. And as far as creating goes, it's what's continued on after the show. Like the show ended 5 years ago, and yet y'all are still out here making new music, between Rob and Jason, creating new musical performers and all kinds of stuff. So that's why we picked music. So I just was curious if that whole thought process triggers anything for you.
That's the first I've heard that that was a deal breaker. Unfortunately, I didn't see that podcast, but that's really, really cool to hear that, because again, it is the biggest reason why I was attracted to the show. And I feel like, maybe I was the minority of viewers at the time, according to, probably the WB's, polls that they were doing. But it was absolutely why I watched the show in the first place, So it's really cool to see like that was a big holdout for him, and why that was a big draw for me, So yeah, that's awesome. I did not know that, so it's really cool. But yeah, it wouldn't have worked with any other soundtrack. I'm just sorry, without Kansas playing, Carry On, or, it just wouldn't make sense. What are you gonna do? Like, Everclear. I mean, it's like I love Everclear, but it just wouldn't work, in the same way, as that music that really kind of. It's just to me, the classic rock is just a raw, very bare bones approach at music, and it's very almost garage bandy, and it's very much that. It's the people that I hung out with in high school, the metalheads or the green, it's just that it felt I was very connected to it,
And then any thoughts on how, now that you do know it was such a central aspect to creating the show, that music has become such a central thing in the conventions? And again, that so many of you, I mean, look at Dick Jr. and the Volunteers, like that would have never existed without Supernatural. Just the importance of music as things have carried on.
Well, I just think it's awesome to be even a part of any of that. You know what I mean? From the moment that, we played Mark Sheppard on stage, to him turning around, looking at Steven's drums and going, oh, and then telling us that he would play drums, and me being like, what? And then having a conversation with him backstage afterwards and seeing him light up in a way that I've never seen Mark Sheppard light up, was really cool to experience. And then just simply going, hey, sometimes you got to come and join us on stage one night. And he's like, maybe, but he was very guarded about that subject for so long that it was like a uncomfortable thing almost to talk about, until he, started coming around and seeing that we were a safe group, we were safe in terms of you could play music and be, be safe about it. And that was a huge moment for me. And that's when I kind of knew that I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. This is kind of becoming bigger than just us playing music on a stage. This is actually, people recapturing their love for music in ways, I'm like, I'm able to kind of be in the front row to watch that. And then watching, Rich Spate, put out records and perform, it's been really cool to kind of just be a part of any of it,
You and Brianna Buckmaster even put out an album that's a cover of a song from the show.
Yeah. That was we discovered it. We did what we were doing at the time was called a PBJ tour, and it was Brianna, Jason, I think Paul Corella, myself. I think that was it for the first one. Maybe Hayden Lee joined us on a couple of the shows, but during that tour, Brianna and I would do an acoustic version of Carry On, and she was, I think, staying in LA at the time. I'm like, well, when we get back to LA, we should actually jump in the studio and record that, because I think it was kind of fun, And then she's like, yeah. So we did that, and like we knocked it out in a day, and it was just, it was really cool that were able to kind of capture that moment from the tour in a recording, But yeah, it was totally inspired by the show. But I was also a massive fan of Kansas, before all that. So it was just cool to be like, this is awesome, I could do this in my sleep.
So the PBJ tour, did you like being in the middle of that sandwich, Billy?
Yeah, it was quite fun. It was quite fun. Yeah, those were big tours for me personally as an artist, just to kind of explore my own solo endeavors and things like that. So it was actually really fun. Just to be, around people that, again, made it feel safe, like Brianna was super supportive. Jason's always been super supportive. Paul's been super supportive. Rich has been super supportive. Rob's been super supportive. So everyone's been very supportive, in terms of the music. So I don't know that I would have explored it as actively as I did without that kind of support group around me, So it's really cool.
Was that tour before or after your solo album came out?
It was before, I believe. Yeah, that one was before. Yeah, that was way before. Yeah.
So were you testing out material on the tour before tracking it?
I don't know if I did anything. I may have done one or two songs maybe, but then at that point I didn't have a whole lot written that I was really willing. I was more just kind of observing as a accompanist, like watching Brianna perform, and so that was kind of more of like a discovery phase for me than kind of testing out material kind of thing. I was just like, oh, how can I make this work for me, in a way. So it was actually was huge, it was huge to be able to do that. Like watching Brianna kind of conduct an audience in a way, like and command the audience was really inspiring, and just know that like it's okay to be fun and not take everything so seriously, which was such a rewarding thing for us in the band and this fandom, is that we can be kind of the goofy guys we've always been and not have to worry about necessarily making fools of ourselves on stage. We can have fun.
Everything doesn't have to be highly polished. You're like, we're good, but we don't have to be stressed about that.
Yeah, we've accepted our position, so to speak.
I had a random question because I was thinking about these tours and things. I was curious if you had any tales of the tour bus that you thought you could actually share publicly.
Yeah, I don't know that I have anything off the top of my head other than they've been whirlwinds and so fun. And I remember, one of the tours in Germany, we were doing station breaks, and we had Rob Humphreys and our buddy Tyler on bass, and Jason and Rob, and we were in this Sprinter van on the Autobahn doing like probably 120 miles an hour. And I was trying, I hadn't had sleep at all. And that tour, I wasn't sleeping well. So I was like taking any moment I can to sleep. But I was like, my head kept falling over like this, like every time, because we were sitting up straight, like we weren't able to lay flat or anything like that. So I was just like, so I took like my like a shirt or around the headrest and I tied around my head and was like this, and then I got some really good sleep there. And then I wake up and Jason's got like photos of people like doing silly stuff around my face. Well, I'm like, but yeah, there's so many though. There's so many, and you know, one of the trips there was like this really undesirable seat in the back that was like around the gear, but it was like just enough to fit one person in there, like a small person. Not like we couldn't get a Jason in there, so he was like default. Like I'm not able to get back there, so it was either Rob or myself, you know. And we called it the butthole because it was such a not fun place to be, because it was just like you're just surrounded by guitars and amps and you're just like, okay, you know, hopefully this isn't a long trip. So yeah, the butthole was quite famous that trip. I think Rob named it that when he was crawling back into it. It's like, oh, I'll go back into the butthole. So it was, yeah, forever be the butthole. So now whenever,
considering his role on The Boys, that's really ironic.
it was way before that too. So now whenever we have to do like a car run from the hotel to the convention, it's always like that back seat is always deemed the butthole, because it's like it's a pain in the butt to get back there, and it's just like it's not fun when you're there. So
Most uncomfortable seat. You're like, all right, dibs, not butthole.
Where do you not want to be?
It's LA again. We're trying to keep our hosting chatter to a minimum in these episodes so we can get the good stuff, our interviews. Next up is a man that, if you've attended a Creation Supernatural convention, needs no introduction, but we're going to give him one anyways. Chris Schmelke is the official head photographer of Creation's convention circuit. He's the one snapping all the lovely pictures of fans with their faves and making sure he gets the angle just right. He's also the photo op room's DJ and makes sure fans feel like they get their 5 seconds of joy. Now, our conversation with Chris Schmelke.
I've done every single Supernatural show that's Creation's done since they started. Started in 2007. I started doing photos in 2004. I think I started with Stargate and Lord of the Rings, and Lord of the Rings was always one of my favorites, just personally. And I was friendly with a lot of the actors from the movie, so they were somewhat instrumental in getting me to take over all the shows, in the sense that they loved how I did it. They saw a noticeable difference in the fan reaction, in their enjoyment of the photo op itself. I don't really like calling it photo ops, but it's how I was always approached. It was to make it more of an experience than making it just come in and marching one in single file like Tusken Raiders and next kind of thing. Since I started, that was always something I wanted to avoid, was that feeling of being treated like everyone's the same, just get through and get out and move on. Having the power, I have the power, He-Man, but I had the power to make it something much more than just a simple time to just walk in and walk out, where the music is a big part of it, because the music is the tempo of the room. The music eliminates anyone needing to communicate next, because you can't hear next. There's a reason why the music is where it is, and it's to avoid hearing personal conversations that someone might be sharing with the actor, obviously in a short period of time, but and even I can't sometimes hear, and honestly I don't want to hear, because that's part of what the room is. When I say the room, I mean the photo op room, was that it should have been treated, in my point of view, as an incredibly special moment for the fan to be there, and the music is part of it in the sense that, you know, it has to be the right music. You know, it can't be, you know, Slayer or anything. You know, it can, sometimes it can, but it needed to just be something that moves the room. You know, I'm not going to put on like Beethoven unless it's Misha, but you know, just odd, you know, songs that come on. The playlists have been kind of curated for since I started. Not knowing everyone at first, obviously, music is kind of the introduction. So when I'm meeting someone for the first time, when the fans are meeting the actor, or the first time or the 30th time, sometimes you remember the song that was playing, you know, and it's a big way for me to, it's kind of cheating in a way because I get to meet someone and immediately get to feel for music that they like or not. And then no one's going to say I hate that music. You know, I just read body language well. So if I'm meeting someone and I have a playlist going and a certain song comes on from the 80s maybe, and they react to it and they say, oh my God, I love this. And I get it right there. I get an idea for, you know, to tailor the playlist for them. Because if they're comfortable, if the actor's comfortable, they're going to be more engaging with the fan in the sense that they kind of let their guard down a little bit. So the music puts everyone in a place that I feel is better suited for the situation. And that situation could be sometimes something that may be filled with anxiety or just you know, memories of maybe watching Supernatural with their grandmother. So it all coincides, it all connects to each other. And I, you know, it's cliche, but I sometimes say the photo op room is like the rainforest, and because everything depends on each other. You know, I depend on my crew. I depend on the music. You know, when the music is not on, sometimes just not for fun, it's kind of a hellish experience. But you know, doing photos without music, it's an awkward experience because generally, if you think about what it is, it's going to be someone meeting someone for the first time. Sometimes the fan is a bit overly giddy and maybe, you know, kind of just, you could tell they're nervous. So the music is 100% critical to what I do. Without it, it's almost crippled, you know, to not know how to make each other comfortable. I forgot what the question was.
I actually front loaded several questions, but
Yes.
Curating your photo op room.
Wait, but rewind though. What was that first question?
Well, the first question was that, well, it wasn't so much a question as it was a statement. I was saying that I was talking with Sadie about how you had talked to me about how important music was in your
yeah, okay, good.
that,
I just want to make sure
and
I
that
didn't
I couldn't
ramble
do
off
it justice.
into
Yeah.
oblivion. I do the photo class sometimes, and I'll ask, you know, does anyone have any questions? Because I love to answer questions, but a lot of times maybe fans don't have any. So then I end up rambling what I just did right there. It is a genuine love for what I do. It's a genuine love for this fandom, and you know, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Now, you yourself are a musician as well, correct, Chris?
Yeah, I was actually, well, you know, going back to photography, my dad was a photographer he was enlisted in Vietnam in the late 60s. I was born in the 70s, so obviously he was back from Vietnam, but he gave me one of his cameras when I was 3. So I was taking pictures of my cats and basically my cat, and that was it. But when I think I was 16, I started playing bass. And my friends and I had a band, and then we played shows in New York. Band kind of fizzled, and then I started my own with 2 of the guys from the band, and that turned into probably about 10 years of playing shows in New York and in the East Coast. We played CBGB's. We opened for the Libertines at CBGB's, and the band, that was kind of the breaking point, that show. And it was just a lot of things building up, and it just wasn't as fun as it was. And the band broke up, and then I wanted to obviously continue doing something creative. I got back into photography because of eBay at the time. I was working at I was managing this computer company in New York, and I was selling their inventory on eBay. And I noticed I needed a better camera to get, just better results for the stuff I was selling for them. And that was kind of my prompt into digital. That was probably 2002. And then probably right around that time, I started doing shoots for friends' bands because I had a good camera now. So I was still in the scene of, music in New York, but I was just doing photography for the bands themselves, which led one of the bands posted shots a company in Canada saw, and they hired me to cover the Independent Music Awards in New York. And that's when I started doing portraits because it was for online articles with the musicians that were there. And it was a lot of bands that were early starts, but also my first portrait was with Nick Cave from the Bad Seeds. And, he had mentioned after, he said that, he felt very at ease with me. And it was just natural. It wasn't trying to be, phony about making someone comfortable. It's just, I think I sometimes have a calming presence, and it lends itself well to what I do on the larger scale. If I panicked, imagine what would happen. It'd be bad. So I started doing the Independent Music Awards, and that obviously led into creation. And I had a history with them because my mom worked there in the 80s, and they had a comic store by my school, elementary school. So I think I started probably in the early 1990, started working in their store when I was 16. And I started managing their store. They moved to California. I had met my wife, and I didn't stay. I didn't want to stay in California, so I was there for a couple of weeks, and that was it. That was the start.
Do you still photograph bands?
Loud and Swinging. No, I do. I definitely do. My band we were somewhat heavy of a band, so a lot of the shows I shot were, very aggressive, kind of thrash metal, mathcore metal, really a lot of stage diving and stuff, which if you're starting out in photography, I don't recommend to start that way because I would come out with boot prints on my head because I'm the tallest one. So everyone would just jump off the stage onto my head. But it was definitely a great introduction to, what I do now as far as photography. And it's become instinctual when you do something for so long to, especially of people, because everyone obviously is different. But generally, when everyone comes up for their photo, they could be saying something. They could look at me for the photo, but I could tell that they're still in the mindset of wanting to talk. So it's a hard way to explain it, but when your face settles into knowing and being focused that you're having your photo taken, it changes, and it becomes obviously much more of a genuine photo than not, still wanting to talk and everything. So it's just instinctual and knowing when people are ready to have their photo taken. While at the same time, I think my plus of what I do is that I'm pretty good at making people feel like they're not having their picture taken. And that is a big part also, because it's, sometimes you may not recognize yourself. And a lot of fans have come up and said that, they love the way they look in the photos. And I do shots for my wife's drama class, and a lot of the kids, they have naturally, not the greatest of self-esteem, but seeing themselves in a photo that they really like, it kind of is a powerful thing, to, change the perception of how you see yourself, and to not be so concerned about how people see you. But if you feel confident and love the way you look and realize that you can look and you are that person, it's pretty fucking powerful, to change, and realize the importance of loving yourself first. I think is a big thing.
That's a huge lesson that I think it takes a lot of us, myself included, far too long to learn.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think you naturally, you might feel selfish that, you're, thinking of yourself, but obviously loving yourself is the best way to love others.
I would say it's interesting that you said people's faces kind of settle because it's almost like we don't think of photo ops as being action shots, but they are, and that there is kind of this quick pace you have to have, and you also have to like settle into that moment.
Yeah.
And did it help by doing, live music photography where you're like, all right, I know when a moment is coming up. I can see when someone's about to take a breath, and that kind of lets you catch that moment.
Yeah, thank you for putting me back on track because I was about that's what I was going to say. You know, I use manual cameras for meaning I focus manually, not just manual settings for the camera. That my cameras don't have autofocus, so not for works for create for the photo ops, but for when I'm shooting live bands or anything else or portraits, my cameras force you to. I say my cameras, the ones I have, they force you to to almost see things before they happen. So when you're shooting live bands, it's obviously challenging, which is what I love because it's seeing something that's going to happen in your mind before it actually happens. So if you could see, just an example, I'll use the swing because I shot them so many times. I know that in their last song, Rob jumps on the drums and then he's going to jump off. He's not just going to casually come off the drum. So I'm already pre-focused on the landing spot of where he's going to land as he's doing it, if that makes sense. So when the camera goes off, I'm already focused where he is, opposed to focusing it on him on the drum, and then he jumps forward towards me, and it's going to look out of whack because I'll be focused on the drum opposed to him. So it's things like that, and I think it lends itself to what I do in, because obviously with Supernatural is, my dad used to help me mail the photos, and he'd call Jared and Jensen Jinkin and Jenkins because he didn't, he could never remember their names. So he would say, these Jinkin and Jenkins, they always do different stuff in the photos because he's seen other ones that, I had taken. And a lot of the ones that, whether it be Star Trek or just kind of, normal, arm around each other. With Supernatural, it was, lightsabers, it was dipping, it was dancing, it was on the floor, it was in the air, high angles. It was a lot of different things. So that is, I think, a big reason of how long we've been doing Supernatural shows. I think next year, well, this is the 18th year. Obviously 2 years to 20th, which is crazy. And the big reason that I think a lot of fans have stayed as part of it, as far as coming to the conventions and doing photos, is that they are knowing that the actors are open to doing poses and things that they may have not realized, not remembered back, when they first started coming, that they saw other photos and shared, the fans all sharing photos to see, I want to try that, or I have an idea now because of that. And that is unique to this fandom, is the creative aspect and the inspiration I think fans have gotten from other fans, which is, kind of rare. And as far as, as long as I've been doing it, I've seen so many different fandoms that we've done, there hasn't been that connection with the fans, but with other fans like this one. You'll see fans at another show and you'll say, oh, you start talking to them. But this one affects them, I think, in life more than just at a convention, because it could have inspired someone to want to do photography, to want to do art, because of discussions that they've had, not just seeing it. When you talk to the person who created it, I think it opens up another train of thought into, really pushing it that you could do whatever you want to do, if you truly love it. That's one piece of, for, girls, I say girls, guys and girls, ask me about, photography and starting out. And I think the most important thing is to love what you do. To if you're shooting, if you're a photographer, to love what it is that you photograph, because I think you don't want to go about it starting in the wrong direction as far as, doing it. Oh, I'll post this picture and, 100,000 people will like it. And that's that. It's, it's important to love it for sure.
Did you watch Supernatural?
I'm embarrassed to say I've seen a few. I was always saying I was going to watch it when it was over, and it just kept going and going. So I never got started. but it's always seems to be on the plane when I'm flying, because I think it's just perpetually always on, which shows how much it's loved. To have a show that was on so long. I mean, some shows go on for too long because they're just on forever and should have ended before. But I think there was a love of the crew that they had, a love of creating together, and which it kind of coincides with the convention in the sense that we're coming up to 200 supernatural conventions in 2 years. So it's obviously been successful for a reason, and it goes back to what I mentioned about the collective of everything. We couldn't have done it without the fans, and in the sense that you ask the fans that come, what brings you back, and when they first came, it was probably the actors, but now it's the friends that they've made, and wanting to be there together, experiencing something that has the potential for magic to happen. And that goes into the photo room, goes into the music in the photo room. And just what I wanted to create was an atmosphere that allowed magic to happen. Because if you have screaming and you have an environment that doesn't lend itself to embracing people that are coming in to be who you want to be, to have the pose that you want to do, that as long as it's not going apeshit crazy, that there's the potential that something that's never happened before to happen. And I think that is, without being disingenuous or being non-truthful to what it means to people, it just lends itself to being a welcoming environment. And again, you can see how I just detour off of any question and turn to rambly about everything.
You're fine. You're fine. I loved that you said that they obviously loved creating together, the Supernatural cast and crew. And that's something that has continued through music. And you, sir, have been invited to participate in that more than once, whether it's going to a band show to take pictures or actually get up on stage and play. So can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it just came up the last weekend. A lot of the cities that we've been, or new cities, like if it's on the East Coast, it's a lot of fans that I've known for years. So they remember when I would play on stage, and it's just Saturdays have become very taxing because it's the biggest day. So Sundays were always the biggest day. So Saturdays were a little bit more time for me to just mentally prepare, and as far as also learn the songs and just to rehearse, because a lot of times when I'm home, obviously they were on the West Coast, so we never rehearsed outside of the convention. So Saturdays in the afternoon was usually the time we would run through a song. I just don't have the time. I literally have probably 20-minute break, because the other time is prepping the car for the shoot. So that gap where it's probably when Misha's on stage, that is usually when I would go to practice the songs and everything. But now I have to, with Shelly and Brittany to manage the car and manage where it's going to be. And there's a lot that goes into that. But actually, playing with them, first of all, they're amazing musicians. They're all, if you give them a song, like they could literally figure it out in about 20 minutes, like all the parts. And I've never, I can't read music. So my band, I wrote most of the music with my guitarist, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing as far as notes and everything else. I played what we were playing. So with Swain, obviously the songs are recorded. So there's easy to reference, to pull back, but sometimes it's hard to, on recordings, to pick out specific, bass lines and everything, because I don't have the individual mixes. So I would ask Borja to send me a video of certain bass lines, and he sent me one in his underwear once, which was amazing. It's probably still on my phone somewhere, but actual playing the with the band and being on stage with them. And, if you ask, what the concert on Saturday night means, it's celebrating that Rob is still here, honestly. And fans, probably most of them know, what happened and what he went through. But that's why I always kiss him on the cheek when I come on stage. And that's just to, again, he's one of the most loved, and, for me, grateful that he's walking on stage still. They're all, we're all, if you think about it, we were probably, when we were doing, I think 16 to 17 shows a year, we were together probably 50, 60 days a year. So if we didn't get along, it probably wouldn't have lasted as long. But, that's, again, it goes into the, the feeling at the shows, I think is lasted as long as it has because it is genuine. The love that I have for the actors and the fans, the love that the actors have for the fans, it's just a love fest, man. Not to get all hippies and shit, but it is, a deep love and caring for everyone that's there. It's, something I'll always remember in the most positive way.
Oh, I did want to ask how the music playlists have changed over the years. Because like you said, you've been doing it almost 200 shows. Like were there certain heavy rotation early songs that now have changed?
Yeah, no, for sure. Fans were always asking, release the playlist, like release the Kraken. During COVID, when we were all, unsure of the future, I said, you know what, now's the fucking time to release the playlist. And I say playlist, it was one of probably 30 that had probably 600 songs on it. So again, when I mentioned about, meeting someone for the first time, obviously knowing everyone for as long as we have, you get a good understanding for what kind of music they like. And there are some playlists that are shared. There are some playlists for the, like the later in the day photos. There's playlists for the end of the show, which is usually Misha in his outfit. There's playlists for Shelly that I know she loves, and again, she's integral to what I do. But it's long weekends, and I know the music that is kind of calming in the sense, it kind of puts things in perspective of it's we're nearing the end, like you could let out a sigh of relief kind of thing. There's songs obviously that I specifically want to hear, but again, it's music that I know is just fitting the moment. And then Jensen, Misha, Jared, Sheppard, the girls, all have their own specific playlists. So if, especially when we do back to back, I make a mental note of songs that have played, and I'm pretty terrible with memory, but I'm pretty good with music memory. So I remember songs that we played in Vancouver to not repeat them here, because it's obviously back to back. It's not always easy because it's the travel and everything, being away from home and everything else, but you don't want it to be more monotonous, to hear the songs in the same order. So everything is I used to do DJing, so it kind of ties into that as far as, just feeling the moment and feeling the mood, and then testing songs out sometimes that haven't played. I'm pretty good. Obviously, I'm doing as many as I have is knowing what type of tempo and what type of song works. And it's literally DJing, because it's reading the room, it's reading the dance floor at a wedding party, to see what songs people love to dance to, or what songs people are like leaving the room to get a bottle of scotch. So that all, it all ties in. And again, it's, for me, someone will say like, oh, it's so boring, you're doing the same picture, you must get bored. I'm just like, you don't get it. Like you don't understand that every person there is there for a reason that is important to them. And if you treat everyone the same, then you might as well just scream next and turn the music off, because that is exactly what I don't want it to be. is to treat everyone the same. I don't want that. I want everyone that's there, the actors, and this is, not specific to Supernatural, but they are incredibly genuine as far as wanting each fan to feel special individually. And I think that, again, that is an addicting feeling to experience, to feel, and we all should, to feel loved in that moment. And that is just happen naturally, and again, that's why I think it's gone on as long as it has, is because it is genuine. The love is genuine there. The caring and the, curation to want someone to feel something that we don't get to feel often. And I think that is directly tied with the music and just the atmosphere. The music, it's almost like layers of, the room, the people that are there helping, what I do, the music, the nature of what it is that I do all day is the way I want it done. If I was coming, if I was attending a show, that's how I approached it. And I think that's a good way sometimes to do things is, how, if I was on the other side, how would I want to experience something? So, yeah. Again, I forgot the question. The playlist, we're actually, I used to use Apple Music. So, there's not really a great connection with Apple Music and Spotify, because a lot of Apple Music was music that I owned. So it was CDs that I transferred that I had in Apple Music. And then Spotify came, and it was just better for shows, because sometimes the service in the rooms isn't great. I had brought some of my stuff I used to use for DJing, and Jared abused it, so I stopped bringing it because it was just too much to deal with. I had like crossfaders for changing songs and everything. I was like, I'm getting a little out of fucking control here. So having the playlists, and I don't really cue songs up. It's in the moment, so as I'm shooting, I'm clicking and cueing the next song sometimes, but mostly I'm just going, by feeling of, just an example, like at the end of some of the actors' days, I'll put on the Titanic song, and that's for no other reason than for them knowing that it's, we're at the end of the line kind of thing. The Titanic's going down. The Titanic's about to sink. But here it comes with Celine Dion. But it's just the girls in the room love it. A lot of the songs were songs I know the crew likes. Again, it's just who depends on who's in the room at the time. There's certain songs that some of the girls hate, and I'll specifically play them for them when they're there. Like Jen hates Africa by Toto. So not for any reason, she just heard it so many times, so it just irks her. So some, like this was the first show, I think it probably a year that I played it, and she immediately turned to me with like a disgusted face. But it's all love. But yeah, so you're talking 20 years of curated playlists. I probably have 3,000 to 4,000 songs on them that are just there, and I just, as it happens, it happens. This tied into why I had never really exposed them to the world, was that it would lose kind of the magic. It's almost like seeing the Disney Imagineers building the Mr. Toad ride. It's knowing that love went into it, and it's to see behind the playlist sometimes it would be kind of spoiling it sometimes.
They need to add that to the photo op description on the website, that get a curated playlist.
Personally,
Oh,
DJ
yeah.
guy.
If it was up to me, it would be like Mr. Toad before you came in the photo op room. Like you would go on the ride and it would end with the photo. Like that would be how I would want it.
That is how those conventions feel. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
It does feel like a ride.
And it's funny, each one, and it's really a specifically Supernatural kind of occurrence, is that every show that we do, it almost has its own personality. And there's sometimes different feelings, and it's never really a bad feeling at all. It's just it's just a, could have been a joke that was said on Friday and that carries over. And it's unique, on that, feeling of each one being individual and having their own personality, which is part of the magic.
I love all that. Is there a favorite song that you like playing the bass live with the guys on? Do you have a favorite?
Probably, my band, we were incredibly, we weren't just straight up like heavy metal, but we were definitely on the aggressive side. So I would say the Taxi Driver song is, because the bass is a big feature of it. Being a guest like bass player, it's kind of difficult to, because you're not singing, obviously, and thank God no one can hear me sing. But the coming on and just playing the bass like in the background, like it's it is what it is. I was kind of forced to be like the front man of my band, so I always had that kind of more pushing myself to be more of a, I think also because I'm 70 feet tall, but to be more of a stage presence, to not just sit in the background, because I had to be, and that's just how I play naturally, is kind of aggressive and more in your face kind of thing. So that song just lends itself to that, because the bass is it's the opener with the drums. So it's where it's just Norton and I playing in the beginning, and then everything comes in slowly. But it's a great structured song. There, like I said, they're amazing musicians, and I'm just honored to be on stage with them.
I love that.
Oh, I do have one more question. Have you ever blacklisted any songs where you're like, no, this is verboten in the photo room or playing live, or like
100%. Yeah, no, not playing live, because I mean generally we're coming to an agreement on something that obviously has the bass featured in a more prominent way on their songs, and also where one that Mike can play keyboards on, because the last thing I wanted was to come on to Swain's show and Borja leaves. Like, that is, just sad to see him walking away. But as far as the playlist room, yes. In the photo room, 100%, there's songs that are banned, just songs that I don't ever want to hear. It's not so much that they're just screaming or, satanic or anything else. It's just that, there's a code that I follow, and it's not about no curse words or anything else. It's just, I don't want no shitty songs in there, because again, it's interesting to see, because sometimes like one of the actors will recommend a song, and they'll come on my to grab my phone, and I'm not talking about Jared, who always does that, but they'll put it on phone, like, oh, let's put this on, and it's the worst shit song ever. Not a bad song, but a bad song for the room. And it's just counting down the seconds till it's over, because they know obviously how long I've been doing this, so there's a big thing about trust involved, that they just know I know the songs that work, and some songs just come on, and it literally shows the power of music. And I think we, the music I think we loved when we were 14 to 16 is probably the music we still love today a lot of times, or it's in that genre, or not so much genre, but just that feeling that he gave us when we heard it, and I could hear certain songs sometimes, and I think as far as memories go, I think smells are maybe more powerful, but music is powerful. And this, hearing a specific song, I could remember a amusement park ride that I was on when I was 12, and I could relive it like I was there, and that is, again, ties into the memories that are created in the room, and the hearing a song, having something magical happen. You're layering memories, you're layering music with a feeling you had. So then when you hear that song, it brings back that feeling. And I think that's really the beauty and the power of music in creating feelings and creating just a multi-layered memory, which is some of the most powerful.
I'm so glad we started our first interview with Billy. I feel like he has a really unique path into the SPN family. And I love hearing all the weird history of elastic waistbands first entering the convention scene before they reverted to their real name.
I didn't know anything. I think like Burley had vaguely mentioned Elastic Waistband, but I didn't know much about it, so that was quite interesting to learn.
I don't understand why they did it still to this day. Like, I'm a Richard girl. I'm a Gabriel girl. Like, that's my fave. But at the same time, like, what were you thinking? What was that?
Yeah.
And it was so cool that Schmelke started in a band before he transitioned to a band photographer. Like, his style is rock and roll, don't get me wrong, but I didn't know he was literal rock and roll.
Right. I mean, you can tell, like, just like you said, looking at him, but
Yeah.
it all makes sense
The
now.
way he carries himself, it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God, because you were a rock star and you still are in your own world, as we all should be.
Right. Now for the show's credits.
This season is a co-production between Denim Wrapped Nightmares and In Defense of Fandom.
Cover art for In Defense of Fandom was designed by Liz Hand.
Cover art for Denim Wrapped Nightmares was designed by Rain Zielman.
Music featured in this episode was by Billy Moran. See the links to his music and more in the show notes.
If you've enjoyed this collaboration, we want to know. Send us a message on Instagram or Twitter. We love hearing from you.
And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to both shows so you never miss an episode.
Also, a review on Apple Podcasts wouldn't hurt either.
See you next episode.
Bye.
You're listening to the Geekscape Network.